Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and this is Superhero Rewind. Time travel is sometimes like a dream sequence. It can work, but it's really hard to do in a way that isn't silly, overdone, or totally pointless. For me, this movie really comes off as a tacked-on story to a film franchise that was already out of steam. You never want your movie to be that one you could have skipped because nothing important happened in it anyway. The entire plot could be summed up like this. April finds a time scepter. She goes back to the 1600s. The Turtles follow her back. They rescue her. They get duped into fighting a war. They win and come back to the present. It's a completely superfluous story to me. It could have easily been a one-shot comic book, and not even an extra long one-shot, just 16 or 18 pages. It feels like without the Shredder, nobody could think of a big, interesting predicament to put the Turtles in, so they came up with a lame one. It's frustrating because there are a lot of little things director Stuart Gillard got right over the last movie. As opposed to Secret of the Ooze, this one has the Turtles actually using their weapons and quite a lot. All four of them have decent moments of doing something with their respective weapon that it's actually for. I especially like the scene where Raphael throws a sai at a bow and arrow. There's a lot of sword fighting, and some of the choreography really isn't terrible. But because I find the story so dull, it's a little hard to notice the stuff that works okay. Some fans say this movie is saved to some degree by Elias Koteas returning as Casey Jones, but what's done with him is such a letdown, he might as well not be there. This time travel includes mass displacement, meaning that for every person who goes back in time, someone from that time takes his place. So Casey Jones is brought in to babysit the four honor guard guys who replace the Turtles. They watch hockey and go out to a bar. That's it. The scene where Casey tries to have them play hockey and then they just beat each other with sticks because that's what they saw on TV is really funny, but this lack of Casey just adds to the lameness. Sometimes the movie even feels like it knows it's letting its audience down. Casey Jones asking when he gets to break some skulls just to stay behind and babysit adds insult to injury. It's supposed to be funny that that's all he gets to do, but it wasn't to me. And besides, Splinter's there. Why do they need Casey to watch these bozos anyway? Splinter defeated the Shredder single-handedly in the first movie, and he saved all four Turtles single-handedly in the second one. Surely he can handle keeping these guys occupied until they go back to their own time, especially since he's the one who speaks their language. It's really bizarre that Elias Koteas also plays an English guy in the 1600s who looks so much like Casey Jones, April thinks that's who he is when she first sees him. It's never mentioned if he and Casey are somehow distantly related or anything. His looking like Casey in no way plays into the story. It's like they were lucky to get Elias Koteas back and they wanted to use him on screen as much as possible since they didn't write enough material for Casey. Now how could this have been less lame? I know, Casey Jones should have gone back in time with the Turtles also. Another thing the movie tries to do that I actually appreciate is give the individual Turtles stuff to do. Donatello doesn't sort of do machines this time. He's a genius. I still don't know how he got that way, but at least he has things to do. He not only figures out exactly how the scepter works before they go back in time, but he's able to build a perfect replica of it from memory without having the real one on hand. Although it gets broken before they're able to try and use it, so who knows if the thing actually worked. And Corey Feldman, who voiced him in the original, is back on this one, and I was so glad not to have to listen to that obnoxious laugh from the Donatello in Secret of the Ooze. Unfortunately, this time Splinter got the short end of the stick in the voice department. He sounds like a gremlin. Raphael has the one character thing I really like, and that's teaching a little kid how to be patient and control its temper. I wish more had been done with this because it has the potential of showing us that Raphael has grown as a character in 3 movies, and now he's grown up a little. Leonardo is the least used character, mostly just there to bark orders every so often. Michelangelo has a character arc about wanting to stay in feudal Japan instead of returning home, and it's so out of left field at the end that it kind of feels, once again, like the movie just trying to be bigger than it is. There hasn't really been enough conflict for our heroes, so we'll have them debate about whether or not to stay behind just to look like there's enough going on. Yes, there's a conflict. There's a war that doesn't really concern the Turtles at all, which they're only involved in because they're looking for the scepter. The problem is that as soon as they rescue April, which happens really fast, and as soon as they get the scepter, which is drawn out as long as possible, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever for them to be here. They never even consider that their presence in the past might screw up history, but at least they don't immediately try to stop a war just because they found one. After all, from their perspective, all of this should have happened already. Not only is the time travel plot hackneyed, but it might be the worst time travel I've ever seen. Let me warn you now, some of this is the kind of stuff I don't usually like to focus on because it would seem nitpicky in another movie, but here, a lot of it is just so hokey, and some of it's just so bizarre that it completely detracts from telling a good story, or even just giving us a fun time. At least assuming you're older than 4. So the scepter thing just happens to go off the moment April shows it to the turtles. They just happen to go to a point in history where there's some legend about turtle-looking creatures who fought someone who looks suspiciously like the Shredder. But while a lot of attention is brought to these drawings, there's never an explanation as to how this coincidence could possibly happen. I mean, really, those turtles look exactly like our characters, and the drawings got there before they ever time traveled. What? Then there's that mass displacement thing. The time travel doesn't work unless you're replaced with someone from the time you're going to who weighs the same as you do. So you're telling me this guy weighs exactly the same as April, and that these 4 guys weigh the same as the turtles? Really? Because they look shorter than the turtles, and they don't have shells on their backs, which I assume have to weigh something. So where's all that weight? When April trades places with the guy who supposedly is her exact weight, he's wearing her clothes. So Michelangelo puts on a pair of shorts so the guy he's replaced with won't be completely naked. But then they show up, and none of them are completely naked. Sure, it's a kid's movie, they're not going to show up naked, but then why draw attention to this at all? You're just painting a giant target of inconsistency on your movie by setting up a rule and then breaking it 2.5 minutes later. Oh, and if you don't take your clothes with you when you time travel, why does April show up in the past with a Walkman? Sometimes the scenes in the past and the present seem to occur simultaneously, even though they're in different points in history. I don't understand how Splinter senses grave danger for the turtles all the way back from the 1600s. It's already happened. Why are you sensing this at this very moment? Why weren't you sensing it just after they left, or a couple minutes ago? Just because a scene from that time period occurred in the movie just before your scene doesn't mean they're happening at the same time, unless, of course, Splinter has the ability to sense decisions that will be made by the filmmakers in post-production. We've established Donatello as a scientific genius already. He understands time travel so well he can apparently build a time machine just by studying one and memorizing the specs. The same genius actually asked this question toward the end of the movie. If we die in the past, does that mean we aren't born in the future? Time travel, of course, is entirely theoretical, and I'm not even going to pretend like I know jack about science. But someone explain to me where that logic comes from. At no point does Donatello question the possibility of, say, their never being born by radically altering history in the past, but he thinks dying in the past might prevent their being born? But of course, I'm not a genius like Donatello, so I suppose I wouldn't know. Noranaga is a really lame villain, especially since Walker, the English guy who keeps trying to rip him off, is actually a lot more sinister and frankly played by a better actor. He's fighting an unjust war and all that, and he's played up as being a stern, dark man, a few words, manipulating the concept of honor. But a couple things disillusion me from seeing him as a force to be reckoned with. One is how he's played for laughs at the end, when he practically gets blown up and his hair looks like this, and Michelangelo calls him Don King. The other, and this is probably just me, is that one of the first times we hear him say anything is when April shows up in his time. Noranaga thinks she's kidnapped his son since he disappeared, and he says, "Where is my son, witch?" At first, I really thought he said, "Where is my sandwich?" and from then on, I couldn't begin to take him seriously. It's somewhat unusual, especially in an already established franchise like this, for a relatively unknown director to write the script, but Stuart Gillard did, and he didn't work on either of the other movies. I really wonder what qualified him to write and direct this. He's directed mostly TV movies and episodes for TV shows, and his writing credits aren't exactly impressive. Before this movie, he wrote such gems as The Captain and Tennille in Hawaii in 1978, episodes of Mork and Mindy and Three's Company, and a ripoff of Airplane called A Man Called Sarge in 1990. He's still directing, and Ninja Turtles 3 is the last movie he ever wrote. What makes this so hard to watch for me is the little pieces that work amidst extremely poor concepts and executions of those concepts. In some ways, it actually takes itself a little more seriously than Secret of the Ooze. But despite all its faults, that movie at least doesn't fail to entertain, as long as you like really silly entertainment. It had a different kind of energy from the first Ninja Turtles, but it had an energy. Both were real attempts at giving an audience a good time, despite whatever they might have been doing or not doing narratively. This one, at least to me, felt like its heart just wasn't in it. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 4.